let's be clear, when the OECD brought out its most recent report, everybody reading that report knew that we were not going to achieve the goal in 2020. And certainly there was disappointment at that point in time. And I think there was also fear that that goal would not be achieved within a relevant time frame. And what we have done through the work that has been undertaken is to demonstrate very clearly, is to raise the level of ambition on the part of many countries, many donor countries, and to be able to demonstrate very clearly that this goal will be achieved. And in fact, it will be overachieved in 2024 and 2025, such that, as Jochen has said, the overall number for the period will be close to, or perhaps above, the $100 billion number. By and large, the mobilization of the $100 billion for 2020 fell short because largely private sector mobilization was lower than we anticipated. So money flowing in for climate finance that's enabled through public expenditures was lower than what we anticipated it would be. That the public side of this, in terms of contributions from government, was not far off what folks had actually committed to. And what we have done through the course of this exercise is raise the level of ambition from public finance going forward without making more aggressive assumptions around private sector mobilization. Now, to be clear, we do need to see the private sector step up. We do need to see more funds mobilized. At the end of the day, the scale of the problem with respect to both adaptation and mitigation is such that we need to see trillions of dollars that mobilize for this, not 100 billion. But what we have done in this report is actually raise the level of ambition with respect to the contributions that donor governments and countries make. And concurrently, we know that there's an enormous amount of work on the private sector side going on by people like Mark Carney and others, where we hope to see significant additional private sector mobilization. But we haven't assumed that in the numbers. And in fact, what this shows is a greater level of ambition on the part of donor countries going forward. And so I think from the perspective of, do we have greater confidence today versus what we had before this process was underway, I would say absolutely we have much greater confidence that the goal that was agreed upon will in fact be achieved, and in fact will be overachieved beyond 2023. I think that's very good news, and I think that perhaps through this process we've moved the bar in terms of how we can provide greater confidence and transparency going forward. When the OECD numbers came out recently, it was very clear that it was extremely unlikely that the 2020 number would be achieved. And to the United Kingdom's credit, it actually made the decision that much more needed to be done to ensure that that goal would be achieved within a relevant time frame. And that's why Mr. Sharma, asked Germany and Canada to essentially lead this process. Is we needed to, in the aftermath of the OECD numbers, to be able to actually demonstrate that this could be achieved and when it would be achieved in order to build trust. And as my friend Jochen said, we have met with developing countries as well as developed countries through this process. Of course, everybody is disappointed that it wasn't met in 2020. But I think the critical point that the UK recognized is we had to, going into COP, be able to find ways to raise the level of ambition on climate finance such that we could point to when that number would in fact be achieved and that in fact it would be overachieved going forward. And we have done that through this process. And I think that's an incredibly important part of building trust in advance of what is a critically important COP.